All right, for today's video review, you're going to be taking a look at Transformers Robots in Disguise 2015 Strongarm. A pretty cool figure here, not, without issue. Nowadays, when you look at whatever show in Transformers is actually going on at the time, the toy line specifically for that show tends to be a little bit more low budget and targeted towards kids. And I feel like RID 2015 is really sort of where that kind of kicked off. Because like when you look at a lot of Transformers Prime figures, it's like, oh yeah, they're just as solid as like the Generations figures of the time. And RID 2015 definitely felt like a bit of a step down from that. It's not quite as bad as like the Cyberverse Warrior classes and Earthspark figures, but still they definitely feel like they're not quite as like on par with Generations figures at the time, just in terms of like the budget put into them. But other than that, she's a decent figure. She turns into a nice, big, beefy truck mode here. This is one of the main reasons why I decided to just like stick with this as my definitive Strongarm and not get the new version that came out in Legacy, just because like that one, was using the Alita 1 mold, which turns into a kind of small car, and like reshelling that as a truck doesn't really work scale-wise, whereas Strongarm here, even though she's actually not a very big deluxe, as you'll see when we get to robot mode, she turns into a nice big truck here. Rolls decently well. She does come with a weapon, which I have edited a little bit. The original weapon had this kind of dumb, like, permanent blast effect like sculpted onto it, had like this like blue blast coming out of it. I just cut that off and like sanded it down just because I feel like the gun looks better without it. But that is originally what it looked like, because I had a little I probably still have it somewhere, honestly, but I didn't really feel like finding it. But yeah, anyway, so I cut that off. I think it looks way better without that. But in terms of storage, of course, you could just plug it onto the light bar up here. But she does also have, I forgot to flip her chest out. She does also have a port down here that you can use these side pegs to peg it into, which has a totally, completely unobtrusive weapon storage, which I definitely really appreciate. But yeah, the vehicle mode in general is pretty good. As you can see, it is pretty hollow just because of like how it does the mass shifting thing. I also don't really love how the feet kind of like stick out at this angle, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, because they're sculpted to like match up with the back here, but I don't know why they sculpted it onto this section of the foot when like the foot can fold down more. I don't know why they wouldn't have just like, it still would have been just one piece. They don't have to have an extra hinge, but have just sculpted this whole piece to sit at that angle from the foot so it can actually flip in all the way. I don't know. It's a little bit baffling to me. Maybe it's some geometry of like how this worked out, like the heel joint or whatever, but it's I don't know. That always kind of annoys me, but it's not really that big a deal, all things considered. It's just one of those things where it's just like, if the feet could have folded down all the way, why didn't they do that? But yeah, definitely I think she's lacking in some paint. Like, she doesn't have like tail lights, these bits don't match. She doesn't have the back windshield. The front grill isn't painted at all, but overall it gets the point across. In terms of comparisons in this mode, just for a standard one, here she is with Kingdom Sideswipe, so you can really see what I'm kind of talking about here. Like, she turns into a nice big sort of like in scale beefy truck, which I really appreciate. And then just to kind of drive that further home, here she is with the Alita 1 mold, which is of course the mold that was used to make the newest version of Strongarm. And yeah, even if you reshell this as a truck, it would just be like way too small in comparison to like other deluxe cars, since Alita 1 herself is already kind of like a small car mode as a deluxe. So yeah, this I think just works way better. And then also, just for the sake of later in the video, a figure that I really like to show her off with is Prime first edition Bulkhead, because they kind of do the opposite thing, where like he definitely mass shifts, so he becomes much larger in robot mode, and she becomes much larger in vehicle mode. So I like showing the two of them off together so you can see just like how much they change, because it's like, okay, yeah, he's definitely bigger than she is, but not by like a whole lot. But we'll definitely see how that changes when we get to robot mode. And speaking of, to get onto transformation, we can obviously just take off the weapon here. First thing you want to do is take these side panels. They'll kind of unhook from here and here, and you just want to fold these up just like this. And then you can take this whole section, it will untab from the legs here and flip up like this. And then you kind of just leave the wings back how they were for vehicle mode. Like you can widen them a little bit. I wish that this like tabbed in or had like a, you know, like a locking point or something, because it is kind of annoying. But then we can take the chest piece here, just fold that up, rotate around at the waist, which really, you know, you can leave the chest piece in like that if you're not like bothered about storing the weapon, because it doesn't really get in the way in vehicle mode. But yeah, we rotate around at the waist, split the legs, flip those feet around just like that. Then we take the entire front bumper section here and we'll untab and kind of come down like this. It will split, and then you take these sections of the front bumper and just fold them in on our arms just like that. And then you want to take this section here, which I guess notionally the chest piece is supposed to lock in place, but they rotate at this joint here, not at the shoulder ball joint, but at this joint down here, which again is another thing that I wish had a better locking mechanism, because when you move her arms around, it does tend to want to move that joint around as well. But yeah, there we have Strongarm in her robot mode. And yeah, in general, I think she looks pretty good. But yeah, like I said, she's definitely lacking a little bit in terms of painted detail. Just like picking things out, even on the head there, like you know, it relatively works, but you know, Strongarm from the show definitely had more detail like on the side of her head. But overall, it's a good head sculpt. Of course, she's got the sort of like weird kind of like QR code-esque gimmick here that the RID 2015 toys had. But yeah, you know, her backpack is a little bit egregious, and I mean, honestly, my biggest problem with it is just that it doesn't lock into place. So when you're messing around with her, it kind of flops around. Like, it's not super loose or anything, but you know, it's just easy to kind of bump out of place since it's such a significant part of her vehicle mode. And, you know, she's got some cluttered things here, like the shoulders kind of bump into the door wings there. But overall, I think it's pretty passable, honestly. Now, in terms of articulation, the head is on a ball joint, so it can rotate around like that and gets a little bit of wiggle back and forth. The shoulders are on ball joints, which can rotate around. Again, you know, they do tend to want to move this joint at a certain point, which is kind of annoying, but they can rotate around in and of themselves. And then there's also like a separate hinge right here that allows them to go out to the side. She has a bicep swivel kind of like right above the elbow, and she sort of has like a double jointed elbow. Like, this is made like her elbow proper, but you can also like use this transformation joint to kind of like mimic a double jointed elbow, though at a certain point it's kind of just like transforming it back into the front of the car. So it's like her arms, you know, her hands are a little bit cluttered, like sitting within these boxes, but honestly that doesn't bother me all that much. See, there's that backpack going. She's got a waist joint here, ball jointed hips, which can go forward and back and out to the side. She's got a thigh swivel, like a little bit over 90 degrees of bent the knee, and then the feet are just kind of sculpted in that A stance, and they can also tilt back a little bit, though this like blue panel that they sit within doesn't tilt, so it's like you're not going to be able to keep it fully flat-footed, but you know, you can still use that for something. So honestly, you know, pretty decent articulation for the time. Yeah, you can just definitely see like the door wings, just like this is kind of constantly kind of just like falling down. It doesn't when she's just standing there. Like I said, it's not like a loose joint or anything, but you know, it's pretty easy to bump out of place, and it's kind of annoying that that doesn't just like lock in anyway or like fold up slightly more. Like, I think that's probably like the worst part about this figure, but it's not the end of the world. Now, obviously, we can give her a weapon here, and she can hold it like that. Yeah, it doesn't help that these bits kind of like bump into it too. And if you want to store it, she does have a port on the back here, which is literally just the light bar port, just gone all the way through, and you can just store that on her back, which I do appreciate there, that she actually has like meaningful weapon storage in both modes. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, here she is again with side swipes. So you can see, even though she was much bigger in vehicle mode, she is pretty much just like an average size modern deluxe. And just for posterity's sake, here she is with Alita 1. And, you know, like I said, like the vehicle mode is one thing, but also just like I like the proportions of this figure a little bit better, because like Strongarm was, you know, kind of a buff, beefy gal in the show. And like, do we need all of the female Transformers to have this kind of like really skinny body proportions? Like, I don't know. I like Strongarm better as like a little bit more of like a bruiser. That was something that I really appreciated about RE 2015, is that all of the female designs like literally looked like they could have been male designs, just like with a different head. So it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like for the robots to just, kind of have neutral bodies rather than like all be super skinny. It's like that's always something that's always bugged me about Transformers, is that like the majority of the female Transformers are just like all have the same kind of body type. They all like look like idealized proportioned women, and it's just like kind of gross. But either way, that's what the two of them look like together. And then just to really drive the mass shifting point home, here she is again with first edition Bulkhead from Transformers Prime. So you can see how much bigger he is than she is in robot mode. So you can see like she really shrinks to robot mode where he gets a lot bigger. So it results in, though the two of them, like he's still got a bigger vehicle mode, but not by much. And she's got, a much smaller robot mode. And yeah, I mean, it's not a point about price or anything like that, because he was a Voyager and she was a Deluxe. So it's like, it's not really a comparison between the two of them. I just think it's kind of neat how they kind of both do the mass shifting thing in opposite directions. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to Strongarm. She's a decent figure, and if you didn't get this figure and you went for the new one, like she looks fine. The main sticking point really for me is just that vehicle mode size. Like it's just so tiny, and it doesn't really work as like a truck. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely still prefer this one, even though it does have its issues, but to each their own. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to her. If you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews at least till the end of the month, so every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. But then I'm going to be dropping the Sunday videos in March and just go to Tuesday, Thursday. But yeah, and without further ado, here we have Transformers RID 2015 Strongarm.